I'm here today to respond to why the consumption of dairy is unnecessary for good health. And my advocate's three claims are that alternatives to dairy can give you many nutrients. The second one was milk fails to prevent bone problems, and the third one is milk is problematic to the human body. And so for the first claim, he pointed out that every nutrient in dairy can be found in other foods, but actually some alternatives are loaded with sugar to make up for the lack of flavor. In real milk, it contains a lot of vitamin D, calcium, vitamin A, potassium, and protein. And although the alternatives could provide all the nutrients that cow's milk does, it is actually fortified with nutrients, such as calcium and vitamin D, meaning that the nutrients in alternatives are enhanced, but they can overdo one nutrient, which may counteract the benefit. And this happens because it is just making it comparable to milk. And according to Lisa R. Young, a professor of nutrient at NYU, she says that milk alternatives such as almond, soy, and rice milk are not even traced to dairy. She says that almond milk typically contains 1 gram of protein per cup, as to regular milk, which contains 8 grams of protein per cup, meaning that the protein content in regular milk is 8 times greater than it is in almond milk. For his second point, he pointed out that milk alternatives are often supplemented with many nutrients found in milk. And although there are alternatives to dairy which may not provide all the correct nutrients, it is important for kids to drink real milk rather than alternative milk. And so many parents encourage their kids to drink milk because it is vital for a kid's growth and health, and it provides them with a good source of all the balanced nutrients and proteins. And according to Vincent Iannelli, a board-certified physician, he says that kids who drink milk are not as likely to drink other less nutritious drinks, such as soda. And since they're so used to drinking milk, they're not going to be craving like any sugary drinks. Alternatives are not always trustworthy, so it is important to check the label to make sure it is enriched with all the correct nutrients and vitamins, especially when giving it to kids because you never know what the non-dairy milk drink really contains. And with that being said, alternatives to milk are not all that natural sources of protein and nutrients. My advocate says that soy milk contains as much protein as cow's milk. But according to Peggy Pletcher, a diabetes educator of Healthline, she says that a common alternative to milk is soy milk. But soy milk is not a good source of protein because it may contain carrageenan, which is an additive used to thicken and preserve drinks, causing digestive issues with some people. This is often mistaken to be natural, but studies from Healthline show that it causes colon cancer, bowel syndrome, and bloating, which can often lead to greater diseases. For his second point, he claims that milk fails to prevent bone problems, but he doesn't provide much evidence as to why it does. And according to experts of New Mexico Clinical Research Center, they said that dairy really does help with bones and muscles. It provides calcium, which is a major ingredient for healthy bones. This mineral provides structural strength to not only bones, but to also our teeth, and helps our body perform numerous other functions, such as clot blood and transmit nerve impulses. And every day, we lose calcium through our skin, nails, hair, sweat, and urine. Since our bodies cannot produce calcium, we have to get enough calcium from the foods we eat, especially dairy. Usually, your body gets the calcium it needs from your diet, but if that's not possible, it will start pulling calcium from your bones, making them weaker in the process. And for my advocate's third claim, he said that milk is problematic to the human body. But and he also pointed out that drinking the milk of other animals is inherently unnatural, which is true, but lactose is the main sugar in all mammal milk, and everyone is born with that gene that codes for lactase, which is the enzyme that processes lactose. We have the ability to digest milk when we were babies, so it's not necessarily problematic to the human body. And milk contains all the proteins, fatty acids, and micronutrients needed to nourish a growing calf. So given that human muscles, cells, and organs are similar to a calf's, it makes sense that dairy products are also a good source of nutrients for humans. And although, according to Nutrition Advanced, about 65% of people are lactose intolerant, and he makes a claim that many people are lactose intolerant, therefore it is problematic. But there is a solution for those people who are lactose intolerant. According to medical doctor Michael Joseph, he says that lactate pills can help with those who are lactose intolerant and can consume dairy. He says that lactate pills contain the natural lactase enzyme and help to prevent symptoms with those who are lactose intolerant. And therefore, my claim is that dairy is necessary for good health because the alternatives to dairy do not provide the correct nutrients that cow's milk does, and dairy helps with bones and muscles, and that human consumption of dairy is not problematic. Thank you.
All right, structurally everything's easy to follow on the first point at least. When you talk about the nutritional value of the alternatives compared to milk, I think you make some good contradictory claims here. These are rebuttal issues for the most part, and they work pretty well. The protein ratio I thought was a nice point that you made. The notion that there might be extra elements that are added to some of the alternatives that make them a little bit problematic. You know, I think that might be a good point to repeat down when you talk about milk being problematic. You say, well, we also know that the soy milk, for instance, can be problematic for people because the additive that's necessary to keep it consistent and be able to use it the way milk is creates the same kinds of problems for people, and in fact, maybe worse ones because we've got a cancer risk that's going on there. So I like that argument, but I think it's useful to you in another spot as well, and so don't forget that you've already made the claim. Now make an application to it, to the other point. The bone issue, I think, is, you know, we've got very generic information on this particular point. I don't remember what the advocate's evidence was on this point. You don't really talk extensively about it. You just have the, like I said, the kind of physiological information about the need for calcium and where we get it and what happens if we don't have a sufficient amount. That's understandable, and I think that that's something that probably people, you know, don't need a lot of explanation on, although the advocate's argument was that we can probably get this from other sources. I don't know that all of the other sources were included in the nutrients things that you were talking about. I seem to have a memory of calcium being available in non-soy, non-almond milk, you know, kinds of things that they talked about, but I could just be conflating it with a different speech that I heard. The issue of it being problematic, I kind of like the answer here that acknowledges, yeah, some people have lactose intolerance, but there are solutions to that. And the idea that it's human beings, there's something weird about that. I like your explanation. Look, humans come with the ability to process lactose. All animals have this lactose thing. This is just a simple analogy. We can process the same kinds of foods, and it produces a particular benefit. The whole idea that it's unnatural in some way, you know, a lot of things are unnatural that we eat. Let's face it, we do a lot of weird things to food that we eat. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. Cooking it is pretty damn unnatural. So why that's a bad thing is not quite clear. I like your other argument, though, that says, you know, we got the lactose pills, and that helps address some of those problems. I do think that you ought to look up at the audience occasionally. We've had a lot of speeches where people are just reading to the audience, and I know that you're trying to be direct and follow the structure, but don't forget that you have to connect with people and establish an ethos in order to be believable.